So, what is important in the end? Peter is in the 4th chapter at this point, and he's taking on the subject of the end of history. As he takes on the subject of the end of history, Peter gets into some really practical application. He picks up in verse 7. He says, "The end of all things is near." So this doesn't mean, according to the critic, who would say that Peter thought that Jesus would return in his lifetime. Only that Peter thought that Jesus could return in his lifetime. That is the state that the first century church lived in, that Jesus could return at any moment. This is called the imminency of Jesus' return. Immediately, at any second, he could return on the clouds. But not that he would. This didn't get him into any kind of date setting or any weird stuff like that. Jesus will return 2023, May 1st, anything like that. Peter didn't believe that, but it could happen at any second. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, Jesus could return. Let's think about this from the alternate perspective, though. Imagine this was a secular document, and we read that the end of all things is near. Imagine it didn't end with the return of Christ. It just ends. You know, as Eliot put it, how does the world end? Not with a bang, but with a whimper. It just ends. We read from Stephen Cave, who's an agnostic philosopher. He says, "No matter how great our glory in this life, it could only ever be a postponement of oblivion." So true. No matter what we do, no matter how influential we are, no matter how many footnotes we get our names in, no matter how many record holdings we have or whatever you're into, it's all going to be trivia, it's going to be trivial, and then it's just oblivion. There's just nothing. Like imagine if you talked to a doctor and he said to you, "Oh, you only have 60 minutes to live." You're like, "What is this, Jason Statham, Crank 3? Is that what's going on here?" You're like, "There was a Crank 2? Yes, there was." 60 minutes to live, and the doctor says, oh my God, I didn't mean that. I meant 60 months to live. 60 months. Would you say, "Oh, I feel so much better"? 60 months, 5 years. Oh, that's great. Thanks, Doc. Appreciate that a lot. 5 years? That'd be pretty scary to be thinking about that. I'm going to be dead 2021, 2026. I'm gone. Well, what if the doctor said 60 years to live? You see my point? 60 seconds, 60 minutes, 60 years. It's over, and it's going to be oblivion. We're just postponing the inevitable. R.D. Lang, the atheistic psychiatrist, he said, "We wish to die, leaving our imprints burned into the hearts of others." What would life be if there were no one left to remember us, to think of us when we are absent, to keep us alive even when we are dead? This is a humanist idea that you live on in the hearts of other people. Yet he says, when we are dead, suddenly or gradually, our presence scattered in 10 or 10,000 hearts, eventually it will fade and disappear. How many candles in how many hearts? Of such stuff is our hope and our despair. Yeah, so I live on in your hearts, but I'm gone. But then eventually you're gone. And then the people in whose hearts you live, they're gone. And so human history is just a sequence of a snuffing of candles, one after the other. I hope nobody says, "Oh yeah, James, when I die, oh, James, he lives on in my heart. I'll live in heaven. Thank you very much. Not your heart." Heaven, which sounds a lot better than this. Here's Sheldon Solomon, professor of psychology professor at Skidmore College. He writes in his article, Tales from the Crypt, "Humans would be riddled with abject terror if they were constantly plagued by the ongoing awareness of their vulnerability and mortality." Abject terror. Why is it that we aren't just walking around in abject terror? Because we know we're going to die. That's one of the two things we know for sure, taxes and death. And so we know it's coming. I mean, we're postponing the oblivion that's in front. We can all see it. It's on its way. Some sooner than others, but it's the final leveler, the equalizer. Why aren't we just walking around in abject terror? He says humans, if they were thinking about their deaths, would be twitching blobs of biological protoplasm, completely perfused with anxiety and unable to effectively respond to the demands of their immediate surroundings. Twitching blobs of biological protoplasm, just in abject terror, thinking about our deaths. He's right. He is absolutely right. I'm going to be gone forever. It's just snuffed out, and that's it. That's the end of the story. Or is it? Is that the end of the story? What if human history ended not there, but with a fresh start? What if the end of this life is only the doorway into the foyer of an entirely new mansion? Jesus said in John 14, in my Father's house, there are many rooms, many places for you to live. Tons of space. Come on in. He said and promised us that heaven is real. You know, if this was true, like if human history didn't end with a bunch of twitching blobs of protoplasm perfused with anxiety, but if it ended with a new beginning, a new heaven, a new earth, a fresh start, resurrected bodies, man, I would want to make sure that I was going to be there. I would want to make sure, like there's so many people today who are banking their eternities on this idea that you just need to be good enough. If you're just good enough, like hopefully, maybe, possibly, you'll go to heaven. I mean smart people, like intelligent professionals, like everywhere else in their life. They have things planned out, like their retirements and their stock portfolios and their education and their career. They got that planned out. Then you're like, so where do you think you're going to spend forever? And they're like, I don't know. I never really thought about it, I was worried I would, turn into a twitching blob of protoplasm perfused with anxiety if I thought about it for a little bit. You haven't thought about it. Well, I guess I have thought about it. If I'm a good enough person, if I'm good enough, I think my good deeds will outweigh my bad deeds, and I got to be good enough. Yeah. No, I don't believe that. What did Jesus teach? This is in the final chapters of the Bible. Jesus said, behold, I am making everything new. There you go. History doesn't end with a whimper. It ends with a bang. And Jesus is going to come into this world, and he's going to rejuvenate, renew it, making everything new. And he says, I will give this to the one who thirsts from the spring of the water of life. And here's the key words here, without cost. No, you don't earn it. You don't pay for it. You don't beg and plead for it. You don't show God your good deeds and say, now you have to accept me. On what or on whom are you basing your eternity? Are you just going to bank? You're just going to bank it on, I think I'm good enough? I'm going all in with Jesus on this. He's the one who said, no one knows what heaven is like except for the one who came down from heaven and then returned there. He's the one I'm going all in on for this. When he says he's giving out eternal life without cost, I believe that. I trust in that. And when we get to see God, he's going to have one question for you. The question is going to be, did you receive the forgiveness that I paid for through my Son on the cross? Or were you hoping to get in here based on your good deeds? Let me tell you something. No one is going to get in there that way. No one is going to stand there and thump their chest in front of God and say, I'm as good as you and I deserve to be here. It's never going to happen. God has engineered it in such a way that everyone needs to humble themselves and bow beneath the cross to get into heaven. There will be no self-righteousness there. Only people that admit, I desperately need it, and who have accepted it without cost. Secondly, if human history is going to end with a new beginning, with a new heaven, a new earth, this would mean that all of a sudden our relationships, these wouldn't be ending in twitching blobs of protoplasm perfused with anxiety. They wouldn't be ending in death. They would be the premium commodity. These would be the locus of all value, human persons, because these are people for whom Jesus died. These are people which are eternal. Everything else that we see, everything around us, everything is going away except for whom? People. And so, consequently, our worldview would change quite a bit, wouldn't it? I mean, insofar as you believe this, insofar as you believe that Jesus was correct, that, people have the ultimate value, insofar as you believe that, all of a sudden your worldview would change, as would your priorities. This is why he says the end is near. That means it's going to happen in any minute. Therefore, be of sound judgment and sober spirit. You know what the opposite of sober spirit would be? It would be drunk. Like, are you sober or are you drunk? And when we get drunk, we get pretty stupid. I don't know if you noticed that. And it's funny, the drunk person never knows this. It's only us, their friend, sitting there, we see it. They can't see it. For one, drunk people, they overestimate their abilities and they underestimate the dangers. So when you're at the karaoke bar and you're there and there's that guy and he's standing up there in front of everybody and he's just put on that song by Journey. I can definitely sing as high as that guy. And you're like, this is just a car crash waiting to happen, looking at him. Why is he overestimating himself? Because he's drunk. He's drunk. He thinks he can sing like Steve Perry. He can't. Dancing. You're at a wedding. And, there's some people, you're hot. You know how to dance and stuff. I don't get that, okay? But, you're a dancer and you've got, rhythm and, if you ever see me dancing at a wedding, run, don't walk, to get me off the dance floor. That is a sign. That is a sign where you just need to be just sit down, drink some coffee, walk this off, okay? It's because I normally know in a sober state of mind, don't ever do that. That would be humiliating to everyone involved, including yourself. And, but when you're drunk, you get stupid. You do stupid things. Like karaoke and dancing, yeah. We make choices based on our present feelings. Yeah, when you get drunk, all of a sudden eating those 15 tacos at Taco Bell with the fire sauce, that seemed like a good idea. And you wake up the next day. Why do we do that? At the time, it felt like a good idea. Drunk people, they laugh or they yell. There's two emotions. It's angry or everything's funny. And they don't reason through things. They don't come to good conclusions. They yell at you or they laugh. And where are we going with all this? What's Peter saying here? With the end in view, don't be a drunkard. What's the point? Here's the point. This is us when we neglect eternity. This is us, that we overestimate our abilities. We think to ourselves, I'm just going to live for 80 years, and it's not the life expectancy, it's the life guarantee. I'm going to live that long. There's no dangers. I'm going to be okay, and everything's going to be fine, and I know I'm not going to get sick, I'm not going to die, there'll be no accidents, and I know I've got this much to live. We make choices just based on how we feel. So, for example, if something just didn't feel right to you, you wouldn't want to endure. You wouldn't want to persevere because you're this is all I have. I only have, a couple decades here, a few decades, 8 decades, maybe. And you start to get really stupid. You make these stupid decisions based on how you feel in the moment, the present moment. You can't have the delayed gratification to think about, how are my decisions going to impact eternity? And when you really sit and talk with someone, I've talked to people about, the eternal perspective. And, people will say, yeah, but what about, your career? What about your schooling? What about this or that? And I'm yeah, we should get a career. We should go to school. We should get a degree. Yeah, of course. I'm saying that God and people are the most important thing. Do materialists, hedonists, do they have any good arguments? Do they have an argument no, that's really not a logical idea for X, Y, and Z reason? No, they usually either scoff or laugh or they yell. They get indignant and angry. But they don't give you a good reason. I just gave you a good reason. Everything we do is going to end in oblivion, period. And if there is eternal life, I hope you would see, this is something we should be moving toward. and something into which we should be investing. But no, the eternal, eternity drunkard, they don't see this. They just can't think about that. All they can think about is their few decades. And so they either laugh at you or something, or they get angry, they yell. And it's kind of like being drunk, poor state of mind. So he says, you need to sharpen up and think about this. This is where you're headed. And this is why prayer would be important. If you're just thinking about this life, prayer, that would really go on the bottom of your priority list, wouldn't it? Like, I got things to do here. I'm busy. Like, I'm an active person. I'm type A. I got to get things done today. But prayer, that's not something that's really that important. Unless you believe that everything that you would ever do to make an impact on anybody out there would be infused with prayer, either by you or by someone else. That prayer would actually be the most important thing you do in any given day. Then he says in verse 8, above all, keep fervent in your love for one another, because love covers a multitude of sins. Keep fervent in your love. People hear this, and this is something that Peter has repeated. Remember in chapter 1, the 22nd verse, he says, fervently love one another from the heart. And so people will hear about fervent love, and they're like, I've heard about that before. And Peter's like, I know, I repeated myself. You need to hear this more than once. Like, you need to be reminded. I've heard about it. Well, are you keeping fervent in your love? Like, are you keeping at this? Well, some people will say, yeah, I'm into that. Like, I get that. It's just, like, I do want deep relationships. My problem is I'm just too busy right at this moment. You see the difference in worldview? If you believe that you're just going to live on forever, and we only have a short amount of time to invest, now would be that time, not later. I'm too busy not to involve myself in this right now. However, if you think that, this life is all that there is, then boy, wasting your time with people, that just doesn't seem like a very good idea. See, this is a tension that we do deal with, though. We do have things for which we're responsible, our education, our jobs, our careers, our investments, a lot of spinning plates. And for some people, they're like, I just want it all. I want the relationships. I also want the successful hobbies, career, work life, school life, this, and we're just adding. We keep adding. We're always putting things on our plate. We're never taking anything off of our plate, you see? And we don't have an infinite reservoir of energy from which to draw to be able to do all these superhuman things. We can't do that. And these different freedoms, they are at conflict with each other. So some people will say, I want time with friends. I really want that. But I also need to get perfect grades. And let me add, I need to work full time. And I need to be a master chess player. Said no one ever. Except me. Like one person was like, meh. Thank you. Meh. All right. Perfect grades and friendships. Okay. Something has got to give here. Do you see that? And maybe you're like a really intelligent person. You can get the perfect grades and still keep up with your friends. Then great. Do it. But what if it's the person saying, I need to get perfect grades and work full time and keep up with my relationships and adding this? At some point, you don't have inexhaustible resources here. Somebody says, I want stability, but I also will move anywhere for more money. Do you see how those are at loggerheads with each other? You can't have both. You either have stability or you have the job that tells you that, wherever they tell you, they point and tell you to move there, and we'll give you $10,000 more. And you just get up and you pack and you move. That's going to lead to instability. One day it'll be instability for you, then it'll be for your spouse, then it'll be for your kids. So I really want a stable environment in which to raise a family. Good. Then part of that means that you're not just picking up and jumping all around the country for more money. I'm stressed out, but I need to work overtime. It's like people can't see. They can't connect the dots here. I'm lonely, but I insist on living by myself. Oh, that one's rich. Right now, we're seeing the biggest increase in one-person households. Right around the turn of the century, the previous century, 1900, it was anywhere between 5-12% of one household, one person, people living alone. Today, it's somewhere around 25% of households are people living alone. This has become completely normal. Do you have any idea how weird that is? I know, like if you have your own apartment and it's like just you, you're like, no, this is just normal. I just live by myself and that's normal. I get that you think it's normal because it's become normalized to you, but that doesn't make it normal. Like historically speaking, what we're living in is very strange. Here's the former Surgeon General, Dr. Murthy, says, we live in the most technologically connected age in the history of civilization, yet rates of loneliness have doubled since the 1980s. That's so strange. We're so connected over our technology in our Zoom calls. Oh, I'm preaching to the choir here, as they say. Oh yeah, Zoom really brought us together, didn't it? All that great technology. There was just something about that was just, what do you call it? Horrific! It was terrible to be looking at a screen, all these little boxes of people, and just like, I hate my life. This is awful. Here's a study. This study was done for 70 years. It actually just reached the 75-year point recently. A study of 268 Harvard sophomores. Of course, this is what they call a longitudinal study done over a long period of time that studied these men and eventually studied their wives after about 50 years. The scientists were like, hey, why don't we talk to the wives and interview them? And the women were all like, yeah, about time, So they interviewed these men and they followed them all through, alcoholism, depression, heart attacks, strokes, everything. They've just been with these guys, both from poor backgrounds and rich backgrounds, diversity galore, okay? This is what they found. The 75 years and $20 million expended on this study points, at least to me, to a straightforward 5-word conclusion. Happiness is love, full stop. What was the thing out of all of these men that brought happiness into their lives? It wasn't romance. It wasn't alcohol. It wasn't, vacations. It wasn't success. The Harvard graduates, they would be the ones who were happy. No. They were just as miserable as the rest of us. The only thing that brought happiness consistently across this entire cohort of men were love relationships, what they call attachment theory, attachment to other people. There's too many studies to roll out. I'll give you one of undergrads because that's a little bit more close to home for us, not the 90-year-old men. The happiest 10% of undergraduates had one thing in common: good social relationships. Why would that be the thing? That's weird. For young people and for old people, relationships. I want deep relationships, but I'm too busy. Here's my question. Is this the thing that is above all else in your life? Like, let me put that a different way. Like, Peter says, above all, keep fervent your love for one another. Yeah, okay. Are love relationships to you like a nice accessory? Like that'd be kind of cool. Like that'd be nice to get like a cool little like love relationship, like a friend. That'd be nice. Maybe even 2 if they match, But that's a nice little add-on, that would be good for my life. See, the Bible doesn't teach it this way. The Bible doesn't say it's an accessory. It says it's a necessity. This is the thing that comes first. Jesus said, you seek first the kingdom of God, and all these other things will be added on. He said, you love the Lord your God first, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. This comes first. And then we figure out how to do the life around that, around the central core of love relationships. Keep fervent in your love, yes. Other people will say, well, I don't know what to say. Okay, you got me. I want to get into love relationships. That sounds good, but I get so awkward. I feel uncomfortable when I try and talk to people. Yeah, I know. That's why they call this love. It's going to be a little bit difficult. The word here is ektenes. It means to stretch. Your love needs to be stretched out a little bit. It's like stretching out your arms. Reach out a little bit further. When I'm going to love other people, there might be like a certain envelope that I'm comfortable being within. And then bursting beyond that envelope, I'm like, that's just too awkward. I don't want to do that. Like having some awkward silences, that sounds terrible. You're going to need to be stretched. That's part of this process here. We can learn from other people. We can learn how to love. This is not something that's considered a gift. This is something that we learn to do. So what we can learn is by watching other people. What do they do? How is it that she is so good at talking to people? How come the awkward silences don't bother him? How does she always know, the right question to ask? How to put in the right timing, the right facial, and we can pick up on this. We can actually pick up from modeling from other people. Here's the question. Are you going to allow discomfort to control your life? I know, like, the thing of our generation is like, oh yeah, awkwardness is like the kiss of death. Anything that's awkward, uncomfortable. Oh, we wouldn't want to do that. Here's my homework for you, if this is you. The next time you're thinking about loving another person, by that I mean like going to initiate, relationally speaking, and you decide that would be too uncomfortable, I feel too awkward, I feel too insecure, I want you to say out loud or in your head really loudly, I am not going to speak to that person because I'm going to let discomfort control my life. Next point. You might as well be honest about it. I'm going to let my anxiety, I'm going to let my fear, my discomfort control me for the rest of my life. Say that aloud. You will see what a stupid idea that is, and you'll push through to the other side. All right, other people irritate and annoy me. All right, I got the good news and I got the bad news here. You want the good news or the bad news first? Good news? Okay, good. Luckily, I had that on my PowerPoint. The good news is, this is a good sign. If you're being irritated and annoyed by people, that means that you're close enough to people to be irritated. So you're in good proximity. Good job. Bad news is that you're self-righteous, okay? We got to work on that because basically what this is saying is that, other people, they're annoying. Other people, they're irritating. It's basically like saying, other people, I had a thought here. Learning to overlook, irritation. That's what it was. It was a really good point. Here it is. What this is saying is, other people irritate and annoy me, but I never irritate and annoy anyone else. Self-righteous. Self-righteous, that's what you are. Admit it. We need to learn to overlook a lot of these annoyances, irritations. The Proverbs say that hatred stirs up strife, but love covers a multitude of sins. That's the place from which Peter is drawing this. It is to a person's glory to overlook an offense. It is to a person's glory to overlook an offense. Proverbs 19:11. So a lot of the irritation, I'm just as annoying, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, whatever, who cares? But when we're in a community of grace where we're overlooking this, Jesus got annoyed. Jesus did. How long shall I be with you? How long should I put up with you is what he said. But he still got in there. Mark 9, he still healed that guy's son, even after saying, I'm annoyed. But he didn't let his irritation stop his action. So you might be feeling irritable. That's okay. We need to learn to be easy to please and hard to offend. Easy to please and hard to offend. Most people, hypersensitive at how people offend them, insensitive at how they hurt others. Here's a little statement I heard I thought was pretty good. Love the person until you like the person. Love the person until you like them. For a lot of people in our lives, we don't naturally like them. But how does God view me? Does God view me and say, oh, that James, I love him, but I don't like him? No. Hosea 11:8, it says, oh, Judah, oh, Ephraim, my heart is overturned within me. That's feelings for people. Jesus had this. Paul had it. Peter had it. Feelings. But it takes time. It's right. That irritating person, annoying person, it's going to take time to learn how to like them. So what do you do in the meantime? You love them. you continue to love them. Well, so far, this has felt a little bit abstract, and so Peter gets a little bit more specific. When it comes to love, what does he mean? Let's put boots on the ground here. Be hospitable, he says, to one another without complaint. Hospitality, hosting, loving those that are not like you. Although he says, be hospitable to one another. This would be hosting, I guess, hosting people into your home. If you want to do this, one of the things you should do when you get a house or you're renting, whatever, doesn't matter, you dedicate that place to God. Basically what you're doing is you're saying, I know this is yours anyways, God. This belongs to you, but I'm dedicating this house for the purpose of serving other people. I remember when we were looking for a house, I had two prayers. The first was, just have it be $100,000. Like, that's all we can afford. $100,000, God. That's all we can afford. It ended up being $103,000. I know. That was before, like, real estate happened. All right, then the second thing was, we really want to use this house to serve people. We really want to use this house to serve people. And we just kept praying that. And one of the things I love about our house is how dirty it gets from people coming through constantly. We've got people coming over most days of the week. Love it. If you're going to host, don't complain. That's Peter's point here. Do this without gangumas. It's an onomatopoeia. It's kind of like drip. You know, gangumas is gangumas. They didn't put the recycling in the recycling. Gangumas. They made a pyramid out of the trash. Gangumas. Don't complain about it. We don't want to go over to your house if you're just complaining all the time. Just shut up and host without complaint. Also, avoid being rigid. Avoid rigidity. Like the one couple I knew, I was talking to them and they said, no one around here wants to ever come over to our house. And I was like, weird. I know, like, the people in your group, they love to hang out and stuff. And they're, no. We are always inviting people over. No one wants to come over. So I was like, I'll look into that, So I asked a couple of the young people in their, home church, why don't you guys go over to so-and-so's place? And they were like, because they treat their place like a museum. We walk in there and we got to have our shoes off. It's like, oh. And then you get your shoes off. And then, whoa, okay, a coaster. Everything's got a coaster. And then this and that. And everything is just real. Don't put your feet on there. And don't do this. And in my house, okay, I'm not being real black and white about this. But in my house, we don't even know what the word coaster means. We never even heard of a freaking coaster. And we got rings on our stuff and stuff too. Like our furniture gets destroyed, but we have friends. So that's kind of nice. I like that. Whatever level you want to set it at, I don't care. But I guess my point is, don't be so rigid that people feel like they're at grandma's house when they come in. I can't touch anything. Everything is just on display. We also, if we're hosting, we want to create a warm environment. That means we don't treat our house like a pigsty, okay? Another example, this was in a group years ago, an older group, where people in the group, the group was dwindling and nobody could figure out why. And it was discovered that they had this 14-year-old dog with bladder issues. And that dog was just dripping urine all throughout the house. Couldn't figure out why that home church couldn't grow. It's because it smelled like a wet dog porta potty. And it was just disgusting. Nobody wanted to be there. Okay, come on. We got to clean up. We got to do our best. And we got to serve those who host. So if we're over at someone's house, we got to be there doing the dishes, helping out. We can't just, be judging each other. Hosting, helping each other out, making a good environment. Boy, is that important. And he says, as each one has received a special gift, employ it in serving one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. So this talks about spiritual gifts and how you use these. People who boast or think highly of themselves with regard to their gifts, that always bothers me. People always talk about how gifted they are. I'm so gifted. She's so gifted. He's so gifted. Gifted, gifted, gifted. Have you ever heard those stories of like the self-made man who's, so prestigious and everything? I remember seeing a story years ago of a business mogul talking about how he was such a self-made man, only to discover that his daddy had given him $50 million to start his first company. Self-made man. I couldn't look at him the same way. And wouldn't that make your skin crawl if somebody was talking about how they're such a self-made man and you found out they were given 50 mil to start their first company? That person is you when you boast about your gifts. This is cosmic plagiarism. That's what it is. It's basically stealing from God, taking his gifts and saying, oh, that belongs to me. I'm such a gifted, gifted, gifted person. Okay, nobody cares. Maybe people do care. I'll tell you who doesn't care. God. God does not look at you and say, wow, you really impressed me. Any more than I would look at a fruit fly and be like, wow, you really fly well. No, instead, Peter's point is, if you've received a gift, by the way, it's a gift, you didn't earn it, use it. That's the point. Use the gift to glorify yourself? No, to serve others. I don't care about your freaking gifting. I don't care. What I care about is, do you serve other people or do you build yourself up? Many of us have multiple giftings. We know we have at least one. Each one has a gift. 1 Corinthians 12:7. To each one he gave spiritual gifts. Each one has a gift. Are you using it to build up other people as good stewards? Yes. Stewardship is the idea that you're managing something that was given to you. And this is the basis upon which we're going to be judged by God. I mean, we're under grace. We're forgiven when we come to Christ. But God's going to look at us, and we're not going to be able to compare each other to one another. There's going to be gifted people there, not as gifted people there. It won't matter. God's just going to be you and him. And he's going to judge you based on what he's given to you, not what he's given to your roommate or your spouse or whatever. And in that day, God's going to judge and reward you based on what he gave you. How did you steward? How did you manage what I gave to you? So Peter tells us, he says, whoever speaks is to do so as one who is speaking the very utterances of God. That'd be a good reason to be reading our Bible so we know what to say, wouldn't it? That right there. If there was no other reason than to know what God says so that I'm able to speak to other people. Then he says, whoever serves is to do so as one who is serving by the strength which God supplies. Those times where you feel like you've exhausted all of your energy and I couldn't give any more, and then you still choose to give out to other people, and you catch that second wind. What is that? The strength which God supplies. What is it when I'm starting to speak and I don't know what to say, and then the words start to flow? That's the Spirit speaking the utterances of God right through me. Oh, that feels so good. And then he concludes, he says, so that in all things God may be glorified through Jesus Christ. It's to him who belongs the glory and the dominion forever and ever. Amen. That makes sense. We don't get the glory here. He gets the glory because he's the one who gave us the gifts. And anything we do, it basically shows how good he is, that he could work through a bunch of idiots like us. The worse we are and the worse shape we're in when he starts to use us to love other people, that gives him an incredible glory that we wouldn't have seen otherwise. Well, as we wrap up, in the end, you're going to want to know that you've restarted that relationship with Jesus Christ. You want to know that. And you can know that. You don't need to wait until you're dead to find this out. In fact, I wouldn't advise that at all. You want to know right now. 1 John 5:13 says, I've written these things so that you may know you have eternal life. You can know right now by praying to receive Jesus Christ into your heart. And here's the thing. This doesn't need to be a scripted thing, like you need to have some kind of formula or kind of prayer. This is just a cry of the heart. If you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be forgiven. You will be saved. You'll go to heaven. And so this is just you and God, just talking to God and just saying, God, I need your forgiveness in my heart. I need you to come into my life. And that's what God's into. He's into relationship. And in the end, you'll want to know that you spent your time building up the cause of Christ, affecting people's lives. Yeah, when we're dead, all of this is going to be wiped away except for people. And so as we study tonight, was there someone that popped into your mind who you've stopped praying for? What is the name of the person that you need to initiate with? Maybe they've been initiating with you and you've been kind of deflecting. No, I'm too busy or whatever. Fervent. Keep fervent in your love. Keep at it. I used to be fervent. Keep being fervent. Keep initiating. Do you serve without complaint? Do you know your spiritual gifts? And how have you been using those lately? You know, we become real happy when we know our spiritual gifts and we are using them. That brings us a lot of joy. We should learn these, learn what they are, and then put those into practice to build up other people. And in the end, we're going to see this brings glory to God and rewards to us.